The bass hit my collarbone before the stairs did. Something from the sound system, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Pride and Joy, dragging its knuckles across the ceiling like a man who knows exactly how good-looking he is. And the vibration settled into my sternum the way weather settles into titanium. The air tasted like cumin and rendered fat and cilantro that had no business smelling that aggressive at 9 on a Friday. My bad knee took the last step with controlled negotiation, and the sciatic nerve sent its customary greeting up my spine like a telegram nobody wanted. The bar hummed with wrong energy. Not bad. Wrong. The frequency of people planning something stupid with excitement. Miguel stood behind the bar polishing a glass he'd already polished twice, wedding ring throwing light against the bottles. He saw me and his face softened at the edges, went young around the eyes, hand already reaching for the top shelf. "Hey, Mom." The word landed the way it always did, like a fishhook through the softest part of my chest. "Hey, hun." He set the glass down with ceremony. The liquid inside caught the refurbished lighting and held it. Amber gone, almost copper, the color of a sunset that's taking its sweet goddamn time dying. Blanton's. He said it like he was introducing me to someone important. Single barrel. Been saving it for a night that deserved it. I lifted the glass. The bourbon opened like a door into a room I didn't know I'd been locked out of. Caramel first, then dried cherry, then wood smoke in a sweater you haven't worn since last winter. On my tongue it was baked apple and vanilla. White pepper finish biting back just enough to remind me this wasn't dessert. This was a handshake with teeth. What's the occasion? Miguel's eyebrows performed a full theatrical production. You're joking. I wasn't joking. DevOps had been a 12-hour knife fight, and my brain had filed Phoenix and River's wedding is tomorrow, under the same category as the sun will eventually consume the earth. True, inevitable, not requiring immediate emotional processing. But Miguel's face made it real. Tomorrow, he said, and his voice cracked on the word like a teenager's, which was absurd because Miguel was 29 and had been married longer than some of these kids had been out. Della emerged from the kitchen carrying hush puppies, golden, obscene, glistening with oil like small edible planets. Nobody eats until I say, you can eat. She set the tray down with the precision of a woman diffusing ordnance, and I swear to Christ, if any of you come back tonight too drunk to walk, I will make tomorrow's reception food taste like revenge. That's not a threat, Elaine called from the corner booth where she was already working on what appeared to be her second rum Collins. Tonight's rum, dark and Barbadian, judging by the color. That's a promise from a woman who controls the food supply. That's terrorism, Della. Delicious, deep-fried terrorism. You're goddamn right it is. The plan had been Sarah's idea, which meant it arrived fully formed, philosophically justified, and impossible to argue with. 2 parties, 2 groups, one for River, one for Phoenix. Not bachelor parties. Sarah had been characteristically surgical about the language. Their person's nights out, she'd said 3 days ago, pressing her flannel cuffs with the precision of someone who irons ideology into fabric. The institution of the bachelor party presupposes a gendered framework that neither of them occupies. We're taking them out, separately, to learn things. What things? Ezra had asked, blue hair catching the light like a question mark made of peacock feathers. Sarah had looked at Ezra the way a chess player looks at a pawn that just asked what a bishop does. Everything we wish someone had told us. So here we were, Friday night, the night before 2 kids who'd found each other in the wreckage were going to stand in Piedmont Park and promise each other the only thing worth promising, that they'd keep showing up. River arrived first, buzzing with the frequency of someone who hasn't slept in 3 days because joy keeps waking them at 4 in the morning. Scrubs replaced by a flannel over an indigo girl's tee and jeans that looked ironed, which meant Phoenix had ironed them while pretending not to be nervous. I'm not nervous, River said immediately, to no one who'd asked. Sweetheart, Elaine said, you're vibrating like a tuning fork someone struck against the side of a church. That's excitement. That's terror wearing excitement's dress. I've seen it before. I've been it before. Elaine took a long pull of her rum Collins. Twice. Lisa sat beside Elaine, nursing Jameson and Diet Coke, her eternal compromise between wanting to drink and pretending the Diet Coke was doing anything about it. I wasn't nervous before mine, Lisa said. Course, I was marrying the wrong person and didn't know it yet, so what the hell did I have to be nervous about? Kira materialized at my side the way she always did, not arriving so much as having been there all along. Leather jacket, dark jeans. She didn't touch me. She didn't need to. Where are we going? Kira asked, and her voice was the low hum of a machine that runs clean and doesn't waste fuel. Sarah appeared from the back hallway, phone disappearing into her pocket with the smooth efficiency of someone holstering a weapon. MSR, Midtown. I blinked. That's a lesbian bar. That's a women's bar, Sarah corrected, in the tone she used when she'd already won the argument and was simply waiting for reality to catch up. River needs to understand the ecosystem. The ecosystem, I repeated. The ecosystem. Across the room, the second crew was assembling. Ezra bounced near the pool table, blue hair freshly touched up, piercings catching light like a fallen constellation. Bubba filled the space beside them the way mountains fill horizons, massive frame in a button-down, straining across decades of shoulders. Brandon hovered near the bar, gin and tonic sweating, hands conducting their usual orchestra. And then there was the new one. Late 40s, razor-cut, silver-streaked dark hair, eyes that cataloged the room with the precision of someone who measured things professionally and found most of them insufficient. She wore black the way certain animals wear their coloring, as warning. A messenger bag hung from one shoulder, and whatever was in it had angles. Ezra made the introduction with the breathless enthusiasm of someone presenting a science project they expected to win first prize. Mom, this is Astrid. She's a scientist, an Luciferian, and she teaches at the university. And she's coming with us tonight because I met her at the farmer's market and she told me the Latin name for every poisonous plant at the booth, and I decided she was family. Astrid extended a hand. Her grip was precise, not strong for the sake of performance, just exactly as firm as it needed to be. I guess Ezra has a gift for collecting strays, Astrid said. Her voice was direct, unsentimental, carrying the clean edge of someone who'd survived enough that soft language felt like a waste of oxygen. I don't typically do group outings, but I was told there would be educational content. There'll be a gay bar. Bubba rumbled from his position by the window, his deep voice carrying the geological patience of the Georgia clay he'd been raised on. Educational enough. I brought visual aids, Astrid said, and patted her messenger bag. Nobody asked what was inside, but several of us considered it. The splitting happened at 9:30. Della stood at the bottom of the stairs like a sentry, pointing at each departing body with the spatula she'd never fully put down. Midnight, she said. All of you. Back here. Vertical and coherent. I don't care if Jesus Christ himself shows up at whatever shithole establishment y'all end up at and invites you to the after-party. Midnight. We love you too, Della. Brandon called from halfway up the stairs. Don't you goddamn dare love me right now. Love me tomorrow when you're sober and I need help setting up chairs. Wendy the Druid playlist. The bass hit my sternum before the door finished closing. Not music so much as a cardiovascular event. MSR on 12th in Midtown, and the whole damn place smelled like sandalwood, cheap beer, and hairspray applied with intent to kill. The floor stuck to my boots with a devotion bordering on romance. River walked in behind me wearing scrubs she hadn't changed out of, forest green tonight. Kira materialized at my left. She does that. Appears like she's been there for hours when she was arguing with the parking meter 30 seconds ago. Sarah had already claimed a high top near the back, unbuttoned flannel hanging off her shoulders, barefoot because of course she was, sandals discarded beneath the stool. Why does this place smell like offhand perfume? Elaine announced, loud enough to turn 4 heads at the bar. Because you don't have good taste, Lisa said, pulling out a chair with the pragmatic efficiency of someone who'd spent decades wrestling farm gates. Elaine ordered a rum Collins, Bacardi tonight, with ginger beer, because Elaine's drink orders were performance art. Lisa asked for whatever domestic beer came in the largest glass. I hadn't settled onto my stool before the first butch materialized. She was thick-shouldered, cropped silver hair, leather vest over nothing, and she leaned against the bar beside me like she was applying for a position that had been filled for 3 years. Haven't seen you in here before, cutie. There's a reason for that, I said. Can I buy you a drink? Maybe a dance? I all kinds of fun, you know. Kira didn't look up from her phone. She didn't need to. The temperature around her dropped 4 degrees, that specific microclimate she generates when someone mistakes proximity for availability. She's taken, Sarah said from behind her beer, twirling a cocktail stirrer between her fingers. Contemplative mode, working something out that had nothing to do with the woman in the leather vest. The butch raised both hands and backed off smiling. Then, Barracuda kicked through the speakers. Heart, Nancy Wilson's guitar slicing through bar noise like a scalpel. And the whole energy shifted. Women started moving. Not dancing exactly. Something more primal. River was already at the bar ordering her third drink. Third in 20 minutes. Honey, I said, putting my hand over her glass before the bartender could pour, tomorrow you're getting married. If you puke on Phoenix during your vows, I will never let you live it down. Mom, River's eyes were already going glassy, that particular sheen of someone drinking past their weight class. Mom, I'm getting married tomorrow. Tomorrow, like when the sun comes up, I'll be someone's wife, Kira said, and the word landed between them like a stone dropped into still water. You'll be someone's wife, and they'll be yours, and the sun will come up the exact same way it did the day before, except now you'll have a person who chose you on purpose, permanently, in front of everyone who matters. River blinked, drained the glass anyway. I let her. Elaine leaned back in her chair with the particular posture of a woman about to dispense sexual wisdom nobody asked for. The first year, she began, is when you discover that the person you fell in love with has habits that make you want to commit crimes. She'll leave wet towels on the bed. She'll eat crackers in the sheets. She'll breathe too loud when you're trying to sleep. And you'll love her anyway. But some nights you'll love her from the couch because if you hear one more cracker crumb hit the fitted sheet, someone's calling Officer Washington. Elaine, I'm not finished. She pointed her rum Collins at River like a gavel. The sex changes too. First 3 months you're fucking like the world ends Tuesday. Then month 4 hits and suddenly you're watching Netflix in matching pajamas wondering when you got boring. You didn't get boring, you got comfortable. Comfort is the enemy of orgasms and the foundation of everything else. Learn to be bored together and the rest takes care of itself, especially if you invest in a decent strap-on. You know, one that vibrates at both ends, so you can both race to the orgasm finish line together, depending on who is the top. Lisa choked on her beer. What? Elaine said, all 60 years of unbothered sapphic energy radiating from her like heat off asphalt. You think marriage runs on good intentions? Marriage runs on communication, compromise, and a solid harness system. I don't make the rules. You absolutely make the rules, I said. Lisa wiped her chin with a bar napkin, face flushed but grinning. She was new enough to lesbian life that Elaine's commentary still hit like revelation instead of routine. Late bloomer energy, that particular wonder of discovering yourself past 50, every conversation a first, every crude joke landing different because the vocabulary is still electric. Lisa started, then paused, organizing her thoughts with the deliberateness of someone who'd spent decades measuring words against consequences. Nobody told me that part. When I was married, nobody ever said the word comfortable like it was a compliment. Comfortable meant you'd stopped trying. Comfortable meant the marriage was dying. In straight marriages, maybe, Kira said, and her voice carried that scalpel quality, precise, necessary, drawing no more blood than required. In queer marriages, comfortable means you finally stopped performing. You stopped trying to be the version of yourself somebody else needed. Comfortable means you can sit in the same room and not speak for 40 minutes, and neither of you panics about what the silence means. River was crying, not loudly, not dramatically, just tears tracking down both cheeks while she stared at Kira like she was hearing the frequency she'd been tuning toward her whole life. Kira leaned in with mom energy and hugged River tight. What about the fights? River asked, wiping her nose with the back of her hand like a child asking about monsters under the bed. Everyone says the first year has the worst fights. The worst fights aren't the loud ones, Kira said, and her voice carried the particular authority of someone who'd had 30 years of the wrong kind of fights before discovering what the right ones sounded like. The worst fights are the ones where nobody raises their voice, where you're both so careful, so goddamn polite, that the actual problem sits between you rotting because neither of you wants to be the one who names it. So name it, Elaine said. Every time. Even when it's ugly. Especially when it's ugly. You know what killed my last relationship? Years of not saying, you hurt my feelings when you did that. Because I thought being tough meant being mute. Tough is saying the hard thing while your voice shakes. Tough is crying in front of someone and trusting them not to use it against you later. You cried? I asked, because Elaine crying was like hearing that gravity had taken a personal day. Once, years ago, during a Subaru commercial. She saw it, and we had the best sex of our entire relationship that night because she finally understood I was a human being and not a wisecracking machine built to deflect intimacy with sexual innuendo. Sarah snorted into her beer, an actual snort, the kind that broke through the stoic armor like a fist through drywall, and for a half second everyone at the table froze because Sarah making involuntary sounds was approximately as common as Halley's Comet. "Don't look at me like that," Sarah said, wiping her nose. The salmon thing was funny. Then the second butch arrived. This one was younger, maybe 30, strong jaw, flannel button to the throat, forearms that could open jars God had sealed shut. She didn't approach me directly. She approached Sarah asking who the red-topped cutie was, which was worse, because Sarah turned toward her with anthropological interest and said, "She's over there. Choose wisely." The butch looked at me, looked at Kira, looked at the space between us that was somehow both empty and completely occupied. "Just wanted to say you're beautiful," she said to me, and the compliment landed with the earnest sincerity of someone who meant it and the strategic miscalculation of someone who hadn't read the room. "Thank you," I said, and meant it. Kira said nothing. The silence carried its own weather system. "She gets that a lot," Elaine told the butch. "The answer's always the same. But stick around. I'm single, 60, and I've forgotten more about women than you'll learn in a lifetime. Buy me a drink and I'll tell you things that'll change your religion." The butch laughed and bought Elaine a drink. The crisis passed, but the night wasn't done testing the perimeter. 20 minutes later, a guy approached from the dance floor. Compact build, solid shoulders, beard trimmed close. Handsome in that specific way that trans men often are when testosterone has done its architectural work. He smelled like good cologne and better decisions, and he leaned against the high top beside me with easy confidence. "Your girlfriend just told my friend you were beautiful," he said, nodding towards Sarah, who was examining a bump on her forearm with detached precision. She was right. "Your point?" I asked. "Maybe I have a chance then, hottie." He was flirting. His hand found the edge of the table near mine, not touching, just close enough to be a question. Kira's voice arrived like a cold front. No. One word, no elaboration, no volume increase. The single syllable of a woman who'd calibrated the exact language required to end a negotiation that never should have started. The guy looked at her, saw whatever lived in the negative space between us, that architecture of belonging that doesn't require rings or labels. "Understood," he said, tipped an imaginary hat, and disappeared back into the dance floor. "You could have been nicer," I said to Kira. "I could have been a lot of things. None of them would have been as efficient." "He was cute, though," Lisa said, and the entire table turned to look at her. "What? I'm new to this. I'm allowed to notice things. I'm cataloging." "Cataloging," Elaine repeated. "Lisa's cataloging men now. The lesbian pipeline has officially sprung a leak. I said he was cute, not that I wanted to marry him. I spent 30 years married to a man. I know exactly what they're worth. I also know a good jaw when I see one. Those are separate pieces of information." Sarah was smirking. That specific smirk she reserves for moments when other people perform the exact dynamic she studies like fieldwork. She twirled the stirrer faster. Problem-solving mode now, something burning through her nervous system that needed an outlet. River, meanwhile, had graduated from crying to philosophizing, which is the natural trajectory of drunk queer women processing the concept of forever. "But how do you know?" she was asking Lisa, gripping the farm woman's forearm with the intensity of someone clinging to a life raft in open water. "How do you know it's real and not just the feeling of wanting it to be real?" Lisa covered River's hand with her own. Rough hands, working hands. "Sweetheart, I spent 30 years married to a man I liked fine. Liked fine. 2 words that should never describe a marriage. The difference between fine and real is the same difference between standing in a field and belonging to the ground beneath it. You know because your body knows. Your body knew before your brain caught up." River dropped her head to the table and sobbed. I caught Kira's eye across the wreckage of empty glasses. She was already looking at me. She's always already looking at me. We would be carrying River out shoulder on shoulder. The bar was called The Heretic, tucked back in the lower end of Cheshire Bridge Road next to BJ Roosters, another gay sports bar, and a place that sold custom phone cases with suspicious enthusiasm. Ezra had been here twice, once for a drag show that ended in a fire alarm, once for a birthday that ended in an ambulance. Phoenix walked in with their hair freshly dyed, violet tonight, shot through with silver threads that caught the neon-like filament in a bulb about to blow. The ruby ring on their left hand caught light from a beer sign advertising something German and unpronounceable. Bubba filled the doorway behind them the way tectonic events fill fault lines. Two men at the bar moved their drinks closer, making space that hadn't been requested but was cosmically necessary. This the place? Bubba's voice arrived from approximately the center of the earth. He surveyed the room the way he surveyed all rooms. Exits first, threats second, the location of the nearest heavy object third. This is the place, Ezra confirmed, and their blue hair caught the black light near the entrance, going electric, going nuclear, going punk rock aurora borealis across both temples. Brandon texted, "He's already inside." Brandon was already inside. He was also already drunk, which suggested he'd arrived approximately 11 minutes ago, because Brandon's relationship with alcohol operated on a timeline that defied metabolic science. He was at the bar, gesticulating at a man whose biceps exceeded the structural capacity of his t-shirt, and Ezra could hear fragments of the conversation from 15 feet away. "And I'm telling you, the way you hold that glass tells me everything I need to know about your emotional availability." The man with the biceps looked both charmed and terrified, which was the standard response to Brandon in full courtship mode. Then the door opened again, and something new walked in. Astrid arrived at Ezra's elbow like a chemical reaction. Late 40s, angular face, dark hair pulled back with the severity of someone who'd survived systems designed to break her. She wore black. Not fashion black, not goth black, empirical black. The black of a woman who'd eliminated variables until what remained was exactly what she intended. "Hey, Bubs." "There she is," Bubba laughed. "Astrid teaches evolutionary biology at Georgia State," he said. "And she's a Luciferian," Astrid finished. "Not a Satanist? There's a difference I'm too sober to explain and too principled to simplify. Also, ex-Pentecostal, which means I know exactly which scriptures people will throw at your friend tomorrow and exactly which scholarly contexts those scriptures pretend don't exist." Phoenix stared at her with the particular fascination of someone who'd just discovered a new species. "I like you already," Phoenix said. "Give it time. Most people don't." Baba O'Reilly erupted from the speakers. The Who, Townshend synthesizer swirling through the bar like a storm system with a guitar solo for a spine. And the absurdity of that song in this bar at this moment made Ezra laugh out loud. Teenage wasteland. Except nobody here was wasted yet except Brandon. And nobody was a teenager except in the ways that mattered. The ways queer people stayed young because they'd started late. They found a booth near the back. Phoenix slid in first, Bubba anchored the other side, Astrid sat on the outside edge like a sentinel who hadn't decided whether she was guarding or escaping. Ezra pulled up a chair and sat backward because Ezra had never sat normally in anything. "So," Bubba began, his voice carrying the particular gravitas of a man who'd survived being black and gay in 1970s Georgia and had opinions about survival that could fill libraries. "Marriage." "Marriage," Phoenix repeated, and their voice cracked on the second syllable. That street rough quality that never quite healed. The sound of someone who'd slept in doorways and was now discussing wedding vows like a person who'd earned the right to softness. "First thing," Bubba said, "you're going to fight. Not tomorrow, not next week. But sometime in that first year, you're going to have a fight so stupid, so cosmically pointless, that you'll wonder if you made a mistake. You didn't. The fight isn't about the fight. The fight is about two people learning to be wrong in front of each other without running." "Second thing," Ezra added, and they meant it with every piercing glinting in the blacklight. "The sex thing is real. It changes. Not worse, not better. Different. Like the first few months it's all, oh my God, we live together, we can fuck whenever. And then suddenly it's Tuesday and you're both exhausted and one of you is watching that baking show and the other one's asleep by 9 and that's not failure. That's Tuesday." "I wouldn't know," Astrid said. "I'm constitutionally incapable of letting anyone close enough for Tuesdays. But I can tell you this. The people who build the longest partnerships are the ones who figured out that autonomy isn't the opposite of intimacy. It's the foundation. You don't stop being yourself because you promised someone forever. You bring yourself, the whole self, the ugly parts, the parts that smell weird after gym, and you let them see it. And when they stay after seeing it, that's the marriage. Everything before that is the audition. Phoenix was quiet for a long moment. Then River snores. Mon Dieu, Bubba said, borrowing Remy's inflection the way he sometimes did when his partner wasn't present, carrying the Cajun's cadence like a talisman. They all snore. Remy sounds like a goddamn tugboat with a head cold. I bought earplugs, I haven't slept without them since. That ain't a deal breaker. That's a sound machine. What about the bathroom situation? Ezra asked, leaning forward on their backwards chair with the intensity of someone contributing essential intelligence. Because I'm telling you right now, the bathroom situation is where marriages go to die. Hair in the drain. Toothpaste cap philosophy. Whether the toilet seat goes up or down or sideways or into another dimension entirely. Ezra, Phoenix said, we've lived together for months. Living together and being married are different animals. Living together, you're roommates who fuck. Married, you're stakeholders. Every bathroom disagreement becomes a referendum on the entire institution. That's dramatic, Bubba said. Tell me I'm wrong. You're not wrong. But you're dramatic about being right, Bubba snarled. Astrid tapped one finger against her scotch glass, a metronomic rhythm that Ezra recognized as processing rather than impatience. Can I ask something that might sound clinical? She said. From the woman who brought a bag full of toys to a bachelor party, I'd expect nothing less, Phoenix said. Have you talked about what happens when one of you changes? Not if. When. Because you will. Both of you. The person you're marrying tomorrow isn't the person you'll be married to in 5 years. They'll shift. You'll shift. The question isn't whether you can love who they are right now. The question is whether you can love who they're becoming, even when they don't know what that is yet, even when it scares them, even when it scares you. The booth went quiet. The kind of quiet that has weight. My ex couldn't, Astrid continued, and her voice didn't waver, but something behind it adjusted, some internal calibration between what she was willing to share and what served the moment. I changed. When I stopped performing, they couldn't find anything to love in what was left. Don't marry someone who loves the performance. Marry someone who's seen the rehearsal and stayed anyway. River's seen my rehearsal, Phoenix said quietly. River's seen the parts I haven't even finished writing yet. Then you're ahead of most people who stand in front of witnesses and make promises, Astrid said. Most people promise to love a finished product. You're promising to love a draft. That's braver. Brandon materialized at the table's edge, drink sloshing, eyes enormous with the specific luminosity of a man who'd just experienced what he was certain was destiny. I found him. Brandon, Ezra said with the patience of someone who'd heard this declaration bi-weekly for 2 years. You find him every 6 weeks. No, this is different. His name is Marco. He's a veterinarian. He cried about his dog, Ezra. He cried. About his dog. That's husband material. That's the whole goddamn bridal registry right there. Did you get his number? Phoenix asked. I got his number, his Instagram, and his opinion on cats versus dogs, which is wrong. But I'm willing to overlook it because his forearms look like they were carved by someone who gives a shit about symmetry. Brandon dropped into the booth beside Astrid, who regarded him with the clinical interest of someone observing a behavioral study in real time. You smell like gin and poor decisions, she told him. Thank you. I use both as cologne. The night accumulated momentum in spirals, each revolution shedding inhibition. Phoenix drank slowly, the nursing pace of someone who wanted to remember. Brandon drank at a rate suggesting tomorrow was a concept he'd negotiate with later. Bubba drank bourbon like sacrament. It was Astrid who brought out her flogger and snapped it on the table. It emerged from her leather messenger bag, and she set it on the table with the matter-of-fact precision of someone placing a textbook. The fuck is that? Brandon said. A flogger. Astrid's voice carried zero embarrassment and maximum educational intent. Suede falls, 24-inch handle. I make them. It's a hobby. You make leatherwork is meditative. Some people knit. Some people do yoga. I cut hide into strips and braid handles that fit the human grip at optimal angles for controlled impact play. Everyone needs a practice that connects hands to intention. Mine just comes with a safe word. Phoenix picked it up, turned it over, ran the suede falls through their fingers with the tentative fascination of someone touching a museum artifact. It's soft, they said, surprised. That's the point. Most people think BDSM is about pain. It's about trust. The flogger doesn't do anything the person holding it didn't agree to. Every strike is a conversation. Every pause is a sentence. The implement is just. She paused, selecting her word with laboratory precision. Vocabulary. Bubba was nodding slowly, the nod of a man who understood that intimacy came in more shapes than polite company acknowledged. The glory hole incident happened at approximately 11:15. Bubba had excused himself to the bathroom with the wobbling dignity of a man maintaining vertical status through willpower alone. He returned 4 minutes later, faced the color of a sunset in a painting nobody would believe was real. "There is," he announced, dropping into the booth with the gravity of a war correspondent delivering breaking news, "a glory hole. In the bathroom. At this establishment. In the year of our Lord, 2026. "Yeah," said a man passing their table with 2 beers. "That's Dave's station. He's been there since 2019. We think he lives there. Nobody's checked." I made eye contact. Bubba laughed. "Through the hole." He waved. Ezra's laugh erupted from somewhere south of their lungs. "Did you wave back?" Phoenix asked. "I did." "Jesus Christ," Astrid said, but she was smiling. A rare event, per Bubba's expression. "Am I ready?" Phoenix pondered. Bubba's hand covered Phoenix's on the table, the ruby ring pressed between their fingers. "Nobody's ready," he said. "That's not the question. The question is whether you'll show up anyway. Every day. Even the shitty ones. Especially the shitty ones. You show up and you keep showing up until showing up is who you are instead of something you do. That's the whole institution, Cher. The rest is decorations." Phoenix's eyes were wet. The violet hair caught the neon and threw colors across the table like stained glass in a church that would actually let them in. "Don't worry, none. I'll carry her out," Bubba smirked, picking Phoenix up and carrying them out as they headed back to Sanctuary. The stairs down to the Sanctuary had never felt more like coming home than they did at 1:17 in the morning. River hanging off my left arm like a decorative anchor, her scrubs smelling like tequila and desperation. Sarah descended barefoot, sandals dangling from 2 fingers, the concrete not bothering her feet any more than it bothered her worldview. The bass hit us halfway down. "Go Your Own Way." Fleetwood Mac. Buckingham's guitar carrying that fury of a man writing a breakup song about someone he still had to see at work. And the irony of that song on the night before a wedding was either poetic or sadistic. River heard it and laughed. Sloppy, gorgeous. Miguel was behind the bar. Of course. He existed there the way saints exist in alcoves. He saw me and his face did that thing. The softening, the wordless inventory of how many pieces I was in tonight. "Mom," he said, and the word carried its usual warmth, smoky jazz vocal wrapped in tender maternal care. "How bad? Nobody died. River's going to wish she had, come morning." He poured without asking. Woodford Reserve double oaked. The good shit. The stuff he saved for nights that needed weight. Dark amber approaching mahogany, vanilla and dark fruit braided through caramel and toasted oak. The first sip opened something architectural in my chest. A corridor I hadn't known was locked until the bourbon turned the key. "Double oaked," Miguel said, "because tomorrow someone's getting married and tonight someone needs to sit with something that's been through the fire twice and came out better for it." Della emerged from the kitchen carrying blackened catfish sliders that smelled like salvation had taken physical form. The sizzle followed her like a soundtrack. "River, baby, eat something before your liver files for divorce," Della said, setting the tray down with aggressive tenderness. "I made these 30 minutes ago because I knew, with absolute goddamn certainty, that y'all would come back needing grease and prayer." River ate a slider with mechanical determination. Color returned to her face in stages. Then the East Side crew arrived. Ezra first, blue hair catching the sanctuary's lighting like something consecrated. Phoenix behind them, violet and silver, face carrying that expression of someone metabolizing wisdom all night. Bubba filled the stairwell, and behind him, Brandon, supported by a woman nobody here had seen before. Astrid entered the basement like she was cataloging it. Eyes tracked the crimson walls, the restored bar top, the plants, the pool table. She didn't smile. She didn't not smile. She observed, and the observation felt like a form of respect more honest than enthusiasm. Astrid, Elaine started. She's a Luciferian, Brandon added helpfully, swaying. She makes floggers and teaches biology, and she's terrifying, and I love her already. Astrid set her messenger bag on a chair and looked at Miguel behind the bar with the evaluative precision of someone assessing a laboratory's equipment. What do you have that's super sweet, gigantic fruity, and not trying to be something it isn't? Miguel's eyebrows rose, the slow ascent of professional interest meeting personal appreciation. I'll mix you something up. Miguel nodded. Pour it. Kira was at my shoulder now, her presence calibrating against mine the way it always does. Not touching, not speaking, just there in the way that reorganized my atoms into a more functional arrangement. She looked at Astrid, looked at me, and whatever passed between us didn't require words. She's interesting. Watch her. The reconvening happened the way bar reconvenings always do. Everyone talking at once, stories colliding, details inflating with each retelling. Ezra was already narrating the glory hole incident with the theatrical commitment of someone who'd found their calling. And Bubba walks back to the table looking like he'd seen God, and God was making sustained eye contact through a glory hole in a bathroom stall. Thankfully, Remy was not there, else we would hear no end to it. The room erupted. Della's laugh came from the kitchen, the full-body kind, the kind that made pans rattle on hooks. Miguel covered his mouth with one hand, the wedding ring catching light as his shoulders shook. Even Sarah was smiling, not the anthropological smirk, but something warmer, something that softened the armor she wore against herself. Meanwhile, Elaine announced, reclaiming the floor with the authority of a woman who'd been telling stories since before half this room was born. Your mother was getting hit on by every stone butch in a 12-block radius, like she was giving away free U-Haul coupons. 2, I corrected. 2 butches. That's not every... And a trans guy who smelled like Dior and bad ideas, Lisa added, and the farm girl pragmatism in her voice made the observation land like a weather report rather than gossip. He was handsome, I'll give him that. But Kira said one word, Sarah interjected, twirling a straw now, still in contemplative mode, still processing, still holding things behind that stoic electrical storm. One word, no. And the man evaporated like morning fog, confronting direct sunlight. It was efficient, Kira said. It was terrifying, River corrected, and she was grinning now, catfish slider grease on her chin, eyes bright with the particular joy of someone surrounded by people who'd chosen her. I'm marrying into a family where one person can end a flirtation with a single syllable. That's legacy. That's generational wealth. Tell them about the strap-on talk, Lisa said, and then immediately covered her mouth like the words had escaped without clearance from management. Lisa, everyone exclaimed in unison. What? Elaine brought it up. At volume, in a public establishment. I'm reporting. Elaine gave a comprehensive lecture on first-year marital accessories, Sarah said, her voice carrying the measured tone of an anthropologist presenting field notes. The thesis was that marriage runs on communication, compromise, and, I'm quoting directly, a solid harness system. The peer review was mixed. The peer review was Lisa choking on her beer and 2 strangers at the next table requesting Elaine's contact information, I added. They were a lovely couple, Elaine mumbled from her half-asleep position. They needed guidance. I am a public service. And the flogger? Della had planted herself at the end of the bar now, dish towel over one shoulder, arms crossed, the posture of a woman who would not be denied narrative satisfaction. Somebody promised me a flogger story. Astrid reached into her bag, and for the second time that night, the suede fall instrument made its appearance on a flat surface. Della picked it up, tested the weight, ran the falls through her fingers. This is nice work, Della said, and the surprise in her voice was less about the object and more about finding craftsmanship where she'd expected novelty. The handles got real balance. Thank you. I shaped them for individual grips. That one's mine. Fits my palm geometry specifically. Your palm geometry, Miguel repeated from behind the bar. his voice carrying the particular frequency of someone trying very hard not to laugh and failing at the molecular level. "Everything is geometry if you're paying attention," Astrid said, and she wasn't joking. And that was the thing about her. The absolute absence of performance in how she occupied space. She meant what she said, the way lab results mean what they say. No spin, no embellishment, just data presented with precision. I felt the laugh build, the real one, the one that started in the broken places and worked its way up through titanium and scar tissue, and the sciatic nerve that served as my personal weather station. The bourbon was warm in my chest. The room was warm around me. And then someone fed the jukebox. On the turning away, filled the basement like water filling a well, slowly, inevitably. Pink Floyd, Gilmore's guitar, those 4 notes that sound like someone teaching themselves to cry. The song my daughter and I used to sing in the car, her voice, 9 years old, hitting notes that made angels file noise complaints, both of us belting it on Saturday morning drives to nowhere, grocery runs that became concerts. My jaw locked. Not clenched, locked, the mandible refusing its own hinges. My right hand flattened against the bar top, fingers spread, pressing down like I was proving the wood was solid, proving the surface beneath me wouldn't give way to whatever was opening in my chest. Kira's hand landed beside mine, parallel, close enough to feel the heat without contact. The distance was the kindness. "Switch it," Kira said to Miguel. Not loud, the directive of a woman who'd memorized every minefield in my landscape. Miguel moved, closer to the heart. Rush, Geddy Lee's bass rising like a prayer from somewhere more honest than a church, replaced the Floyd, and my jaw released 1 degree at a time. Nobody said anything. That was the rule. Phoenix was watching me from across the room. Their eyes held something I recognized, the tenderness of someone who knows what it costs to miss somebody still alive. They raised their glass. The ruby ring caught light. Tomorrow they'd be standing in Piedmont Park near the Shakespeare Garden, and I'd be standing in front of them wearing whatever authority the Order of Bards, Ovots, and Druids had conferred upon me. Astrid was watching too, the only person who didn't know the protocol, but she'd read the room with laboratory precision. Her laugh-rig was untouched. Her expression held no pity. What it held was recognition. "So," Della said from the kitchen doorway, breaking the silence with the grace of a woman who knew when quiet had done its work. "Anybody going to tell me about the flogger? Or do I have to beat it out of you? Pun absolutely motherfucking intended." Astrid held up the messenger bag. "I make them. You make floggers," Della quizzed. "Suede falls? Custom handles? It's a hobby." Della stared at her for 3 full seconds, then turned to Bubba. "Where did you find her and can we keep her?" The laughter that followed was the kind that heals, not because it fixes anything, but because it proves the broken places still have room for joy. Brandon was asleep against Marco's shoulder at the bar. The veterinarian had apparently followed them to the sanctuary, which was either romantic or stalking depending on how the next 48 hours went. River had her head on Phoenix's shoulder, forest green scrubs pressed against violet hair, and the 2 of them together looked like something a painter would title and never sell, because some things are too true to price. Sarah's fingers had stopped twirling. She sat with her hands flat on the surface, palms down. Still, the storm behind her eyes quieted. She caught my gaze and held it a beat longer than casual, and whatever passed between us lived in the register nobody else could hear. Lisa was telling Astrid about coming out past 50, and Astrid was listening with an intensity bordering on reverence. "I wasted 30 years, Lisa was saying. 30 years of liked fine." "They weren't wasted," Astrid said. "They were data. You can't know what authentic feels like without the baseline of performing. The performance was the control group. This," she gestured at the room, "is the experiment that matters." Elaine was asleep. Head back, mouth open, rum Collins empty, 60 years of exhaustion expressed through a snore that could sand furniture. Della walked over with a pillow from the beat-up couch and put it on her shoulder. "Della's magnificent," Astrid said, looking at Elaine with genuine admiration. "I want to be her when I grow up." "Nobody grows up here," I said. "That's the whole point." Miguel polished a glass that didn't need polishing. He does that when he's feeling things he won't name. "Tomorrow," he said. To nobody in particular, to everybody. Tomorrow, I agreed, and finished the Woodford, and felt the double oak's heat settle into the places where the cold lives. Kira's hand moved 1 centimeter closer to mine on the bar top. Still not touching. The night didn't end so much as it settled, like sediment after a storm, like the last note of a song you didn't know you needed. The dangerous part is the re-entry, the trusting that the heat shield holds. But that's tomorrow. Tonight, the bar holds what needs holding. It always does. Upgrade preferences, protect online privacy from the very first click your digital footprint starts before you can even walk. In today's data economy, free inboxes from Google and Microsoft, like Gmail and Outlook, are funded by data collection. Emails can be analyzed to personalize ads, train algorithms, and build long-term behavioral profiles to sell to third-party data brokers. From family updates, school registrations, medical reports, to financial service emails, social media accounts, job applications, a digital identity can take shape long before someone understands what privacy means. Privacy shouldn't begin when you're old enough to manage your settings. It should be the default from the start. Proton Mail takes a different approach. No ads, no tracking, no data profiling, just private communication by default. Because the next generation deserves technology that protects them, not profiles them. Get free private email. The sharing of joy, whether physical, emotional, psychic, or intellectual, forms a bridge between the sharers, which can be the basis for understanding much of what is not shared between them, and lessens the threat of their difference. Audre Lorde. Our semi-weekly live stream. The bridge is what matters. Not the architecture, not the engineering, not whether it can bear the weight of every truck that wants to cross it. The bridge matters because two pieces of land that had no business touching found a way to reach across the impossible gap and say, I see you over there. Come here. Bring everything. Tomorrow, two people will stand in a park near a garden named for a man who understood that love makes fools of everyone, and that's the whole goddamn point. And they'll build a bridge out of words I'll hand them, and the words won't be strong enough. They never are. But the intention behind them will hold what language can't. Every marriage is a magnificent failure of vocabulary, compensated for by the stubborn insistence of two people who refuse to stop translating. Share the newsletter.